on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts, on Amazon Music, and on Spotify and other podcast platforms. This is 100% Hockey. John Shannon in today on the off day for the Olympic men's hockey tournament in Milan. Soon to be joined by Mike Zeisberger and Mike Harrington as we talk a little bit about what's gone on the ice in Milan. Harrington obviously works for the Buffalo News, so he'll give us an American perspective, and perhaps we'll get the Canadian one from Zeisberger, who works for NHL.com. Tomorrow is qualification day. 4 games: Czechia versus Denmark, Sweden versus Latvia, Germany versus France, Switzerland versus Italy. It would appear that the Swiss have the easiest road to the quarterfinals as they play the Italians. And then the quarterfinals that will involve Canada, U.S., Slovakia, and Finland, and the winners of those 4 previous games. And it's that Wednesday night quarterfinals, it's kind of like the Olympics version of March Madness that night, because you can have a great team and have played very well, and in a 1-game elimination, it could be a challenge. It's a fascinating way that this tournament has formed, and Canada is the number 1 seed. The Americans are number 2, Slovakia 3, and Finland, as the best second-place team in the pools, is number 4. And by the way, when we're talking with Zeisberger and Harrington, I wouldn't mind actually talking a little bit about the NHL. Practices start on Tuesday the 17th, tomorrow, for those teams that, or those players that don't have any Olympic obligations. So a little more discussion about what's going to happen with the NHL starting tomorrow. Mind you, the trade deadline, the trade embargo is still in place until midnight of the 22nd, which is gold medal day in Milan. So it's Zeisberger, Harrington, and me after this on 100% Hockey.
NHL TV is now on DAZN. Hockey lives here.
Here we go.
Watch every game from every team. The best players in the world. And the coldest plays on ice. Watch up to 4 games at once for the ultimate NHL experience. Sign up now at DAZN.
Welcome back to 100% Hockey on YouTube and all the regular podcast platforms, including Spotify, Amazon Music, and of course, Apple Podcasts. Today's an off day in Milan, which means all the media people get to rest up. And, you know, the amazing thing is that I think the media people are more tired than the players. So it's one of those things that's a reality. Pleased to be joined by...
Give a crap about the media, John.
I know. You got to give me a chance to introduce you first. NHL.com is Mike Zeisberger, and the Buffalo News is Mike Harrington with me today to talk about what they have seen and what's going on. Before we break down a little bit of the qualifying games that will occur on Tuesday, Mike Harrington, at first blush, your thoughts of what the American Olympic team looks like?
Well, it's an interesting mix. I mean, I've been very vocal. I don't like the roster makeup. I didn't like the choices on the bottom 6. And, you know, to me, they've gone for grit and roll since 1980, and they've produced exactly 0 gold medals. So far, they look fine. But, you know, in my column in the Buffalo News Sunday, John, I even wrote about this point. It's the Olympics. We love it. Okay. The players had to have it. It was a non-negotiable in the CBA. I'm not a big fan of ruining the season, but okay, let's do it. It's best on best. And then we get to Milan, and Team USA plays Latvia, Denmark, and Germany in pool play, and won't play Canada unless it's in the gold medal game. And my point is, if we're going to stop the season like we have, I want to see all these best on best kind of games. It should be set up more like the women's tournament, and the other guys should be in the other half. And we should see more of Sweden and Finland and U.S. and Sweden and Canada and Czech and what. It's a terrible format. And so far, it's hard to judge how good U.S. really is. playing against some of these teams. How good is Canada's really good. How good is Canada playing France? I hate this format. This is not what we signed up for when we had best on best.
Okay, Zeiss, your turn.
Well, you can have your opinion. You'll never talk the IIHF out of this, or the IOC out of this format. And
I don't know. Harrington's pretty powerful. I mean, Harrington's right up there.
Well, I mean, let's see. Well, in that case, let's see if he can change the World Cup of Soccer format too. That's coming in North America, and they do the same thing. I want to say, Mike, you might get your wish, because what was supposed to be, if you get the number 1 or number 2 seedings in the preliminaries, it's going to be an easier road in. Well, you know what? The way it looks now, the U.S. is going to be playing Sweden, and Canada is going to be playing Czechia, depending on, obviously, tomorrow's play-in games. But if that's the case, there's going to be a couple of pretty good countries that won't even get to play for a medal. So... Right. I mean, that's the one thing about this. I mean, if you get the number 1 and number 2 seeds, again, it's supposed to be set up that you have an easier path, and that doesn't sound like an easier path to me.
By the way, both Canada and the United States, over the history of the Olympics where the professionals have been at the games, we have very short memories. Canada and the United States have both suffered that problem. Not qualifying to play in the medal rounds. We tend to forget the 4-year cycles. We have to reinvent our understanding of what the Olympic tournament's all about. We have to re-understand what goal differential means to games. There's a whole set of rules that we all get hyped up for 3.5 years to talk about the Olympic tournament, and then the Olympic tournament happens, and they said, "Oh, when are they going to put that rule in?" Some of those rules have been in place forever. And that's just a fact of life if we want to play on that stage, Mike Harrington.
But one thing that hasn't been in place forever, which I think is a joke, is if we end up going to overtime, playing 3-on-3 in a medal round. Are we going to go to 3-on-3 in a gold medal game? Really? Really? Are we going to do that?
Yeah. And not only that, we're going to go forever.
Which okay in the gold medal game, but it's not going to last forever at 3-on-3. But I just think that's horrible too. I mean, there are things they can do here, and I'm just hoping these medal round games and the semifinals and the quarterfinal, I'm hoping we see a little more of the wondrous hockey everyone waxes poetic about the Olympics that we really haven't seen so far. I mean, to me, the biggest story and the most interesting thing to me has been watching Macklin Celebrini play at 19 years old for Team Canada. It's just been spectacular, as it should have been, given how he's played for San Jose this year. But other than that, right now, I think Sweden's been a disappointment to this point. Yep. I think the U.S. is a question mark. Jeremy Swayman, holy cow, not good. And the whole Ranger thing we've talked about before, Miller and Trocheck, and even Mike Sullivan. I'm sorry. I mean, what has Mike Sullivan won since 2017? He had a lot of non-playoff teams in Pittsburgh at the end of his time, just for the record. So I'm a little skeptical about this whole thing right now.
So Harrington is suggesting that Celebrini's the best storyline of the preliminary round. Zeiss, where are you?
Well, I mean, I can't disagree with that. And what I find interesting about this is a couple of years ago at Canadian Junior Camp in Oakville, Ontario, just before Christmas, I went there when Celebrini was part of the camp, going to play for Canada at the World Juniors. And I remember sitting with Flyers Director of Scouting, Alan McCauley, about that. And people, there's a lot of revisionist history here, because the year before, Connor Bedard had come out with all the hoopla, he's going to be the next McDavid. And John, I said this on the show the other week, stop, people, all right? I've never seen a player in my life like Connor McDavid in terms of natural skill set. So no, nobody's going to be the next Connor McDavid, because there's only one Connor McDavid. There's my rant on that. Stop it. Okay? Number two. Anyways, we're watching Celebrini, and I remember Alan McCauley and a couple of the other scouting directors say this guy is a very, very good player. Is he generational? We don't think so, but he's going to be relatively special. And I think that goes to the fact that we forget sometimes how young these guys are, 17, 18 years old. How you look at 17, and this kid has showed it, because he did not dominate, okay, with a capital D, like a lot of other, like some kids had, like Bedard had at that time. His ascension has been just incredible, and full credit to him. And once again, we like to put labels on these kids when they're 16 or 17. And this kid is an example of, you know what? Guys can get better and better and better. They're still growing into their bodies. They're still learning. And let's not forget that his dad works for the Golden State Warriors, I believe. And John, you might know the specifics. He's in charge of health and fitness or something like that. So he's been around pro athletes for a long time. This kid does not look like the moment is too big for him. And he's 19 years old. And I think that, as much as the skill he's shown, has been one of the most impressive things about him.
And they put him on the top line. They put him on the top line. There was no doubt he was going to be on the roster, even though people were wondering. It was clear that he was going to be on the roster. And I love the story about the penalty shot in the game against France, where you can pick anyone on the ice, and the players all turn to Cooper and say, "What are you going to do with this one, coach?" As if to say he had any other choice other than to pick Macklin Celebrini to take that shot.
Does make you wonder if Bedard could have been on this team, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, but Bedard has not been as impressive, and I think Bedard, frankly, may have just missed this team. Bedard was close to being on this team. There's no question about it.
If he doesn't get hurt for those, back in December going into it, I think that took him out of the equation. Like Mike said, maybe he was just going to miss out, but I just think that was like, okay, we're not sure. We got to be certain who we bring. So I'll tell you one thing, in 4 years, when you have Celebrini and Bedard and Shaper on this team, I don't think we're going to have a summit like the late Ken Dryden had in the early 2000s about where Canadian hockey is going.
Yeah, 1999 was pretty close too.
Yeah. Well, and by the way, don't laugh. McDavid will be on that team. He might be okay. And I wouldn't doubt that Sid would be on that team too. When you look at Sidney Crosby, oh my goodness gracious, what an absolute specimen! What an athlete! I think my opinion. You talk about the biggest surprise and most positive being Macklin Celebrini. I think you could also pick the oldest guy in the tournament for Canada too, being one of the great stories of this. And I've talked about it before. I mentioned it with Darren yesterday. Can you imagine that if there hadn't been disruptions in 18 and disruptions in 22, Sidney would be going to his 5th Olympic Games?
Yeah.
So then we all revel about Teemu Selanne being in as many Olympics as he was in, but Sid is just to be fantastic. By the way, so I asked about Bedard being on Canada, Mike Harrington. Is this the Jason Robertson story? Is this the Cole Caulfield story? Who would have been the next guy for you to be on this team now?
One of those two should have been on Team USA, and I know we need face-off people and role people. So, I mean, JT Miller right now is rating as the worst captain in the NHL. His team is a disaster. Trocheck a little bit better. Okay, he's got more value, but Trocheck, let's see if he ends up on Minnesota's team after the trade deadline. But yeah, how do you put a team out there without Jason Robertson and or Cole Caulfield? I know that they've got to fill roles. Guys who are that skilled will fill roles in the bottom six on a team. To me, you should have your best players. Team USA is playing this tournament, and they might win it. Who knows? They're playing without their best players because of managerial choices, and that has bitten them in the past. That is one reason they haven't won a gold medal since 1980, and that is one reason right now, to me, where if you're going head-to-head with Canada in the gold medal game, Canada is a prohibitive favorite. And I just don't understand what they were thinking about. You left Jason Robertson and Cole Caulfield home. It's insane to me.
Well, hold on. Just Zeiss, to Mike's point, 4 games tomorrow, 4 games on Wednesday. Is it just a formality that we're talking Canada, United States?
No, because, again, the way that it's worked out, it could be, again, it could be Czechia against Canada. It could be Sweden against the U.S. in the quarterfinals, not the semifinals, which will also have good teams in it, but in the quarterfinals. The loser, you don't get to play for a medal in that. So it's great to say, I'm going to build to play, U.S., Canada. That's what we're looking at. But in retrospect, in the 4 Olympics, which the NHL has competed in, those 2 teams have only met twice. In one of them, let's see.
Well, they won in they met in 2 gold medal
5 times. They've only met twice.
Yeah, 5 times, and both in the gold medal game.
Yeah. And how about in neither one of them was in there in '98. Neither one of them was in there in '06. And by the way, I mean, Sweden, Finland in the final. Maybe it doesn't matter in North America, but wow, I mean that would have repercussions. So I agree with Mike, and this has been going on for a while, John. Like, we're both friends with Robbie Zaminer, great guy. He was an Olympian once. Chris Draper, Maltby. Those guys were on the Olympic team once, and that's no offense against them. But I love how guys say, when they're team building, well, we need guys that are like specific penalty killers. If you're an elite player, you know how to kill penalties. Look at what Mark Stone did in the last minute yesterday. I believe it was yesterday against France. The other thing is, to Mike's point, I was skeptical about Brock Nelson. I was one of his biggest critics. Other than Connor McDavid from the middle of November on, nobody in the NHL scored more goals than Brock Nelson. So, kudos to them. But to Mike's point, the 2 Rangers guys I don't understand. And you know what, John? I was also wrong on Bor Horvat. I was a little skeptical on him. And I think he's had a great tournament. And I know what they said about how good he is in faceoffs, but he's played very, very well. If you can show on that stage that you're playing well like that and you're not just a role player, then I'm all for it. But, getting guys that are specific for checkers or penalty killers, that drives me nuts.
So we have 4 qualification games on Tuesday. We will delve a little deeper into those as we prepare for the quarterfinals on Wednesday with Harrington and Zeisberger on this edition of 100% Hockey. Car shopping should be exciting, not exhausting. That's where CarGurus comes in. They have advanced search tools, unbiased deal ratings, and price history, so you know a great deal when you see one. It's no wonder that CarGurus is the #1 rated car shopping app in Canada. When you're car shopping on your phone, it shouldn't be a maze. You need to see all the information. With the CarGurus app, you can. Powerful search tools that you see deal ratings, price history, and dealer reviews on listings all in one place. And you can turn on real-time price drop alerts so you never miss a great deal. CarGurus connects you with trusted dealerships when you're ready, ensuring a transparent, hassle-free buying process. Buy your next car today at cargurus.ca. Make sure your deal is the best deal. That's CarGurus.ca.
CarGurus.ca.
Welcome back to 100% Hockey. Shannon, Harrington, Zeisberger here on YouTube and all the podcast platforms. Mike Harrington, so we have the 4 games are Czechia versus Denmark, Sweden, Latvia, Germany, France, Switzerland, Italy. Any chance of an upset in any of those games? Is there anything that we can pinpoint to say, you know what, beware the Danes or beware the Latvians?
So I've been watching Sweden, obviously, very closely because of Rasmus Dahlin and the Buffalo connection. He's been their best player in this tournament, right? He's averaging 22 minutes a game, so I've paid a lot of attention to their games. They've been relatively disappointing so far. They lost to Finland, which put them in the pickle they're in the seeding. So they have to be careful with the Latvians, the pesky Latvians, as we like to say, from previous Olympics. That was a big win for them over Germany. The other thing that jumps out at me is we're seeing Latvia grow. We're seeing the growth again of Swiss hockey. Switzerland is putting on a good performance here. They got to the gold medal game against Team USA where Tage Thompson scored the golden goal at the World Championships last year. So Switzerland is a dangerous team. They're not going to lose to Italy. We know that. But I like in those 2 games, how does Latvia account for itself and how far can Switzerland go in this tournament?
By the way, just on the Swedes, what did you make of all the hullabaloo about hearing stories that the pros wanted Paul Maurice behind the bench?
That was Finland. That was Finland, wasn't it?
Oh, that was Finland. I'm sorry. You're right. Yeah, it was Finland. Yeah. What did you make of that?
Well, it was interesting that came out, and and they really got together and played a great game against Sweden. But you're right; there was some discord there with the coaching staff, and a lot of the players had mentioned that Maurice could be a candidate for it. Some of the players I had read when they were approached after the game, like I know Mikko Rantanen was one, so I don't know anything about this. Quite a time for that story to come out, John, I would say, when you're all in Milan playing the games. But interesting to me that somebody should be, getting Paul Maurice over there on a bench. He's a little blocked right now in Canada and the U.S., but that was quite the interesting story there in the finish.
Well, it's funny because other countries and other sports, even Great Britain, the United Kingdom, or England have, not afraid to go to the continent to find a soccer coach. Right. Could you ever imagine, Mike Zeisberger, that a Swedish team or a Finnish team could be coached by a North American?
Well, first of all, my last name is Zeisberger, so you can connect the dots with that. But if I'm an English soccer fan, the fact that their national team is coached by a German, I mean, there's some 9. There's nothing that should not be.
Okay, so this is 100% hockey, not 100% soccer. So
you brought up the analogy. I'm just following in your footsteps. I mean, you opened the door. And by the way, as far as the Canada thing, I mean, the way the Panthers and the Lightning have been going, I can't see John Cooper welcoming his bench to Paul Maurice. But you know what? That might be the most fascinating part of the opening round. But to me, looking at Sweden, their goaltending has been, to me, subpar. And that, when you start thinking about how well they did under the Henrik Lundqvist years, that we sometimes forget that he stepped in for, hey, it's Tommy Salo back in 2002, when I would argue, even though Canada ended up winning the gold medal for the first time in 50 years, Sweden might have been the best team in that entire tournament. And it just goes to show you have a leaky goalie, and that whole house of cards flops in, especially in a one-game tournament. So, John, the other team I'm interested in is the Danes, because with they got Freddie Anderson in goal, Nick Ehlers up front. Do you remember, John, who beat Sidney Crosby, Nathan McKinnon, and Macklin Celebrini in the Worlds to knock the Canada out? That would
in overtime in a quarterfinal, Denmark 2, Canada 1. So,
what are you saying, oh great Swami?
It doesn't go. So is this, in your opinion, are we going to see Jacob Markstrom or are we going to see Gustafsson?
I would like to see Wallstedt.
Wallstedt is who I'd want to see. Absolutely.
I'm surprised he hasn't been in there yet.
Yeah.
John,
what does that say? What does that say if you've played 3 games already? Gustafsson's played 2, Markstrom played 1, and then you play the third in the game that matters the most.
What does it say? It says that you shouldn't be in a play-in game, and the only reason you are, or one of the big reasons, is because your goalie hasn't been good enough. I mean,
and you've played the wrong ones.
Yeah,
you played the wrong ones.
And he played. And look at they played together. Gustafsson and Wallstedt played together in Minnesota. And do we forget that 3 weeks before the Olympics, what did was Markstrom in for what, Mike? 9 goals, 10 goals.
It was.
Got lit up in Jersey by the Islanders.
9-1. Yeah.
Yep. So, to be honest, I have not seen the Jacob Markstrom the last few years since one of his great years in Calgary.
Yeah.
So
look where the Devils have been for 3 months.
We've been disappointed in the Swedes. We've been disappointed. I think fair to say we've been disappointed in the Finns, to an extent. Don't you think?
Well, they did beat Sweden.
Yeah, they also lost to the Slovaks.
Slovaks, right?
Which is where I'm leading to. Is that?
Yeah, you would have thought coming off that Sweden game that they would have played better in that one.
Yeah, the Slovaks are not the surprise, but they're the team that jumps out at you, and we're seeing the continued maturation and growth and dominance of Slafkovsky, who looks every bit the part of a former number 1 overall pick.
Right,
looks like a dominant player who can lead his country in international play for a generation.
And by the way, John, just to point out quickly, as 2 guys that live in Atlantic Division cities where Atlantic Division teams play, just add Slafkovsky to a Montreal Canadiens team that has all this cachet of young talent. Hey, Cole Caulfield, Lane Hudson, we can go down the list, that I think have all signed bargain contracts. That team, I mean, I don't think I'm out of line. And you see, Slafkovsky was the one guy that maybe I would have had questions about. I don't have any questions about him anymore. And I just think that, sure, it can derail, but I think the Montreal Canadiens are going to be a power in this league for a while, just because the cachet of young talent that we're seeing in this tournament through Slafkovsky, and the fact that they're going to have oodles of cap room because those guys have signed team-friendly deals.
Well, I tell you what, I had a front row seat in Beijing in 2022 as Juraj Slafkovsky really played himself into the first pick overall. Because remember, in February of that year, we were all saying, well, how do you spell right on the back of his Montreal sweater? It was a done deal. And Slafkovsky changed everybody's minds in Beijing as he took his team to the bronze medal. Zeiss, you mentioned NHL teams. You mentioned Montreal. We have a couple of minutes. We're now 9 days away from hockey starting again on this side of the Atlantic, and then we're 12 more days to the deadline. Mike Harrington trying to get back into the NHL mode right now. Any thoughts of what we're going to see between now and March the 6th?
Well, and that's the thing. You have to see, first of all, which team comes out of this break like a house on fire and which team doesn't capture their momentum. I mean, you look at a team like Columbus, went into a 10-1. Do they keep that roll going? Even a Buffalo team, they've won, 21 out of 28 going into the break. Somebody's going to slump. And I think a big story coming out of the break, too, is what happens to the Florida Panthers. Do the champs figure out a way to get back in this thing, or they had a bunch of their guys play in the Olympics, they're too far out of it, they're going to start right away with a back-to-back at home against the Leafs and Buffalo. So we're going to learn a lot the first two games where the Panthers stand going into the deadline. And that's really going to have a lot to say in the Eastern Conference, I think. But you're right. You're talking, 10 days, 2 weeks before the trade deadline. It's going to be a huge deal. And a lot of teams still think they're in it. And I think that first week, some teams might make some decisions that they're out of it, too.
Well, Zeiss, how many teams do you think are in it? I mean, you live in Toronto. Where do you think the Maple Leafs are in all this?
Well, I think the Leafs should cut bait, but I don't think they will.
Right.
But I think there's got to be 20 teams legitimately that still think they have a sniff of this thing. One of the ones that I'm most interested in, and it's part of it plays in geography and where I live, but my buddy Harrington has gone over a decade without covering a home playoff game. It's about time. And you know what? I'm fascinated, and Mike would know better than me, but Jarmo Kukalainen has never been shy about adding when it's time. And you know what? It's the antithesis of what was there before. And I've said it on this show with Mike on there that I covered Kevin Adams. I like him as a human being. When he came out and said, well, there's no palm trees here, players don't want to play here, I'd have let him go right then and there. Yep. That is a slap to the fans that live there. Players get traded to Winnipeg. They re-sign in Winnipeg. It's not all about palm trees. And I would love to see Jarmo just go, you know what? Let's go. Let's give these people, long-suffering people, John. There are kids in high school that were in baby carriages the last time the Buffalo Sabres were in the playoffs. Let's go Buffalo.
And I'm confident, John, the two longest playoff droughts currently in the NHL are going to end this year. The Buffalo Sabres and the Detroit Red Wings are going to make the playoffs. They might even play each other in the first round. But I am supremely confident those two teams are going to make it, and those two fan bases are not going to have to deal with the talk of playoff droughts anymore.
Have they ever played head-to-head in the playoffs before?
They have never played a playoff series ever. That's correct.
Yeah, so so then the question becomes, you Atlantic Division boys, at whose expense in the Atlantic?
Florida and Toronto. I think Tampa Bay is going to win it. 2, 3, 4 of any combination of Detroit, Montreal, and Buffalo. Boston's number 5. I think Boston can sneak in, and I think Florida and Toronto are both going to be toast, and Ottawa too.
The other question,
Ottawa fascinates me because I thought that they had a way. They might, but then that whole Allmark situation kind of had the wheels go off the whole thing went off the rails. If they got any type of goaltending, I think that's the one team that does have a shot. But I've given up. I've given up thinking that the Boston Bruins are going to slump. I thought they were going to do it the year they set the record for points because I thought they were old. That was Krejci's last year. That was Bird.
They did slump. They did slump. It was the first round of the playoffs. That's when they slumped.
yeah, right. But I mean, I still think that John Cooper, should get a Jack Adams. He's been passed over it before. I think with the injuries and stuff that they're 18-1-1. I mean, that's just ludicrous in a league where, other than really Colorado, nobody's been able to be consistent. Lindy should get a look too, but Marco Sturm, let's give him some love. Because there's guys, and I know Mike, because, the Bruins come to town and you're looking at their depth chart and you're just going, why, how?
Right.
But you know what?
Right.
it is what it is.
Yeah.
Just before we go, when we talk about teams that are on that bubble, the Los Angeles Kings, how does the Kevin Fiala injury affect what they do, Zeiss?
Well, they couldn't score before, and then they go get Panarin, and then they lose one of their scorers. So I'm not very confident about the Kings. I mean, that was just, You're aggressive. I wasn't sure they were going to make it with Panarin. And I'm even more skeptical now that they lost Fiala. I just think, I'm not counting out San Jose. That's a big ask. But look at, I love what Coach Q has done in Anaheim. And that's a team that I think is going to make it. Edmonton, I'm not worried about. Vegas. So, you can go down a list of some of those teams. But I'm not really I'm not really confident in the Kings whatsoever.
Do not tell Kenny Holland that. He'll give you shit again. Oh, no,
I love Kenny, but...
No, actually, when you and Kenny and I were together the last time, it was me he gave shit to, if you recall.
Yeah, and his answer, and this is what we love about Kenny. I always say that Kenny is like when the late, great Robin Williams would go on Johnny Carson or on David Letterman. You ask him one question, and he'll take you to commercial. Kenny, you'll be on the phone with Kenny. He'll say, "Zeiss, I don't have much time. What would you like?" And then 10 minutes later, he finishes his answer, and it's like, Kenny, you are gold.
He's a good man. Boys, actually, it was kind of, after all the Olympic stuff, it was nice to have a little bit of a conversation about the National Hockey League. That was kind of cool. Appreciate the time.
Practice starts this week. We're right back at it. I appreciate it, Jeff.
That's right.
Thanks, guys. Right. Take care.
Practice does start 2:00 local time on Tuesday the 17th for all those that aren't in Milan. Mike Harrington, Mike Zeisberger, have a great day. Thanks for this edition of 100% Hockey. I'll be back after this.
With the NHL app, you can listen to every NHL game right from your phone. And with home and away broadcast feeds, you choose your way to listen.
And he scores!
Whether you're at work, at the gym, or stuck in traffic, the NHL app puts you right in the action all season long. Every team, every game, everywhere you go. Download the NHL app and never miss a moment.
Thanks to Harrington and Zeisberger for the time, the two mics. Qualification day. Czechia versus Denmark. Sweden versus Latvia. Germany versus France. Switzerland versus Italy. And the quarterfinals that will involve Canada, the United States, Slovakia, and Finland on Wednesday. The lull before the storm today. Most teams did not practice today. Most teams did not allow for availability today. It was a day of rest, or a day for a lot of the teams and participants to submerge themselves into the Olympic experience in Milan and Cortina. Tomorrow's show, after the qualification games, another one. 100% Hockey, two special guests, John Davidson, Scotty Bowman. We'll break down the quarterfinals before they start and see exactly and get the opinion of Scotty and John on exactly what they've seen so far at the Olympics in Milan. John Shannon here. Thanks for listening or watching this edition of 100% Hockey.